it just blew my mind. So if you want to be scared shitless, that's the way to go.
Title of our episode, Scared Shitless.
Yes, that's in, because it's not for kids anyways. Yes, scared shitless. Definitely. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Power Platform Boost podcast, your timely source of Power Platform news and updates with your hosts, Nick Dolman and Ulrikke Ackerbeck. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey. Yeah, it's good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Back from Microsoft Ignite.
So I'll ask again, how are you?
Tired, overwhelmed, my head, so much stuff leaking out of my ears, all the new things they're announcing and everything. Obviously the whole thing is all about copilots, AI agents. That is the core. That is the core of what we do now.
Right. So spoiler alert or cliffhanger or yeah. And at what point does it become redundant to talk about it, do you think? Because now it's like, Sessions at Ignite has AI in it. There's nothing on the agenda that does not have AI in it. And I scrolled through and I thought, surely there are things to talk about that's not related to AI, but it's not. So when everything's AI, when does it become kind of like the weather in California?
Yeah, always. Yeah, you're right. I think we're getting into the phase where it's just, you talk about, it's not like we're going to a conference and they're saying like, programming languages is like, it's just there. It's just part of what we do,
I love that comparison. That is probably the best comparison I've ever heard, because that is so true. When do you go to conference and they go, well, yeah, like you said, programming languages or, just copywriting or just things that we take for granted as just there embedded. And yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. It's there. It's everywhere. You just have to embrace it. I'm excited for it. I'm just, trying to sort of the hype versus the actual real practicalities. To be honest, yes, over the weekend, traveling back in the plane, like on the layovers, I was in Copilot Studio trying to get some of this stuff to work. And, two minds of it. First off, wow, this is really cool. Some of the stuff I want to do, I can begin to build out in Copilot Studio. And then the other part of people saying AI is going to take your job, hold my beer, because trying to figure out how to put these things together, how to piece these parts to build your Copilot agents, you're going to have to upskill, and we're going to be overemployed for at least the next couple of years trying to put these things together to get these organizations to move into what Satya called the agentic world. If you're worried about your job and you're in IT, don't be. But the caveat is you need to embrace and learn this stuff and get your head wrapped around it. And it's going to be a lot more challenging than you think, because now we're approaching all of these new tools. It's the case of even Microsoft's tools are competing against each other in terms of the AI or the Azure Foundry, AI Foundries, the Copilot Studio, all of these things. We're into the new phase of the pro devs versus the makers war is just going to heat up because of these tools as well. Yeah, that is sort of, I don't want to sound negative at all. It's very positive, but it's just sort of like what we expected is going to happen is, I don't think it's not turning out like we expect. Things are taking very interesting twists and turns, and we're in for a very exciting time, but we have to embrace it. You can't just passively watch this and not worry about it. It's just going to affect everybody. And that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And I can sense your energies kind of, because we've been to conferences before and afterwards, especially MVP summits, those kinds of events, where you're so saturated with new knowledge that you don't even know where to begin. I can sense that apathy in you where you just go, It's what end to be. And I have looking at the list of things you have to go through. I have 10 different segues from what you just said into different topics and resources that we have on the list today. And also we talked a bit about the structure of this podcast, and we didn't really talk about it up front, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to give you the regular episode first, and then we're going to dive into kind of an Ignite section afterwards. It's probably going to be 2 episodes, so that you can choose if you just want to dive into the Ignite stuff directly, you can just do that, or if you want to kind of get because so many other things have happened these last 2 weeks. Yeah, we can't just simply talk about Ignite. We could fill 3 episodes alone with just the community stuff that came out this 2 weeks. So we have a beep ton of things to go through. So I think that's kind of what we're going to do.
I'm not. Okay. It might just be an extra long episode, to be honest. But
yeah,
we'll see. We'll tell you where to skip ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So, just to kind of, first of all, there's one of the things you said, about how this is not a fad. How do you separate this from something else? Because we've heard that so many times, right? This is just like HoloLens, right? Yeah, that was supposed to change our world. Suddenly everyone would drive with Google glasses on. We've seen this before, and it didn't really happen. So people are asking, is this kind of the new fad? Is this the new thing? And then reading through the newsletter, Dona, Sarkar, and Jeremiah Meyer, yet last week they had another one of the newsletters that they put out. They compare. Of course, they created a system because that's what they do to measure these things and put these things up against one another. They put a few different fads up against the Copilot AI thing, and this checks all the boxes for the things that we recognize that has stayed, that really does have that lasting impact. So if you're curious, go check out that newsletter to kind of see in a very structured and organized manner the reasons why this will not fade away.
Yeah. This is an absolute paradigm shift. It's like when we first dialed into the internet, but bigger, I think.
Yeah. And that first item was not on the list, so I'm just adding it here. Yes. And then let's go top to bottom-ish here. And you have the first item. You titled it ALM.
Yeah. So the cool thing that was announced, we did talk briefly about it because Yannick presented that at Directions in Europe, but now it's now a public preview, is the Git integration, the native Git integration into Power Platform. So now we can actually set up the Azure DevOps with the source control and move our solutions or environment stuff into that source control. So we can now keep track of all our solutions and use it to deploy to other environments, to set up for dev environments, everything. Just because of everything going on, I haven't had a chance to really dive into this yet. But this is something that came out. They did talk about this at Ignite as well. So we will retouch on that probably a little bit later, but this is something we're going to put it in the show notes. I'm very keen to get this tried out. You do need to be on one of those preview environments where, when you set up your environment, you have to say, get newest features first. You need to make sure that's set up, and then you should be able to be trying this out. So expect a lot of content surrounding this over the next few weeks. I did promise Eliza I would do a video on it, but I am so backlogged in my videos. So hopefully around Christmas, I'll have something out on this as well. So we'll be more on this to come.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like you said, this is also something we'll touch on the Ignite thing. And just to kind of and I said top to bottom, but I'm not going to do that, as you know, because I say that. And the first thing I do is I grab something in the middle of the list just because it fits. And this is one of those things where talking about Power Platform and governance and admin, you know how you have missing dependencies? Because
literally before we started recording, I was importing a solution that we said we wouldn't have missing dependencies, and guess what? So
we have missing dependencies. What?
Yeah, that's what happens when I leave it for a week. But anyways, go on.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, what we I saw two blog posts today or last week that I wanted to kind of highlight in terms of this. And this is why I bring it up as well, because I know that's a very hot topic for you. So I have a blog post here about missing dependencies error for a primary table. Oh, it doesn't make it's from Linn, and I brought it up, and it doesn't exist anymore. So maybe we need to kind of put a little pin in that. But there was some limitation in terms of ALM and how to, if you kind of some dependencies issues you can't really resolve in the studio or in the UI itself. So actually, one of the things that Linn did was create a blog post about how you can remove that kind of dependency by exporting the solution and then extracting it, editing it, the solution, and then packaging it up and importing it again. And also now, he said in his blog post that one of the readers had shared that you can actually also set the primary name column as not required, and also that would resolve it. So maybe that's why he's removed the blog post. I'm not sure.
And then maybe that bug just got fixed in general as well. So it's no longer.
Yeah.
So I actually, so good on, like, I know that we have a lot of old content, but good on Linn for not adding that to the noise sometimes that comes out on our searches for trying to fix stuff. So yeah. And he has good content regardless. So check out his blog anyway.
Definitely. Yeah, do that. Absolutely. And also I saw another blog post from Nishant Rana about how to manage a solution dependency with the refresh looked in Dataverse. Now, actually, when you go in and you look at the dependency, you can now go and see what's blocking the dependency from being, removing the dependency, and then have a remove dependency option where you can actually then have Dataverse go in and delete what needs to be deleted for you. So that's huge. So actually, it's just now that you're kind of running into these issues, you can try that new experience to see if that solves it for you.
Yeah, but it says like, I did read through that, and I do get the removing the dependency, which sometimes makes sense. Oh yeah, that's an old thing. Let's remove that dependency. But also it gave me a little bit of a pause as well. It's sometimes sort of like, like if you have gangrene, then let's cut off your leg kind of thing. You don't want to make sure you're not deleting something that's actually business critical. So you still have to go through, but the tool is good that you can actually identify where the dependency is, and trying to, sometimes these things are hard to find. So yeah, great post on that as well.
Yeah. And also, we saw something this week from Jukka. So what you just said about, like within, for instance, you create a blog post about something, maybe it's something that was fixed by Microsoft, or maybe actually it was resolved by some new features coming into the platform. And what better way to keep track of those than the release plans? Now, this is very interesting. So last week, I saw a post from Jukka Niiranen where he posted on LinkedIn. This is another one of those LinkedIn items where he says he's created releaseplans.net. He's used the URLs of he's used the release plans from Microsoft, and he's kind of subscribing to that, but he's created a much better visualization of that whole release plan thing. Now you remember, and he put it at the URL is releaseplans.net. You remember the release plans for Microsoft, the interactive one used to be experience.microsoft.com or something like that. So I thought, actually, what Jukka's done is brilliant, because he'll get SEO-wise, when you search for release plans Microsoft, you'll get to releaseplans.net before you get to experience something, Microsoft.anything. But I looked, and they changed their URL. So now to go to Microsoft release plans, that's now releaseplans.microsoft.com. And I'm wondering if it's a coincidence or if it's simply them checking it out and going, we can't have this. Because he would have probably won the battle of Google search results.
But the tool itself, I tried it out. Like I saw the link you put in the note. This is amazing. I don't have to sort through or not. I could just click on little buttons and I get exactly what's going on. Oh, PowerPages. I see the GA dates. I see the public preview dates. I just can see all that. Like, Oh, I'm completely blown away. This is going to make our release planned episodes go so much. Well, probably turn them into 3-hour episodes, but still really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's brilliant work. And I absolutely love that it puts this out as a resource for everyone on its own time. This is what community does, right? You do it, and it actually does it better than Microsoft does. So it's, I don't know if it's critique to Microsoft or it's rah, Jukka, or both, but it's absolutely great. And then, of course, you follow his LinkedIn post. Then you see Loryan Strant. He created something similar for a Microsoft 365 roadmap, where it's a Power BI report that he published out anonymously online for everyone to see, for everyone to use. And it's brilliant, just as, visual and easy to use, and with some statistics. And he created a blog post also showing how he's enhanced it with sorting and filtering. So yeah, from the Microsoft 365 space, that's really something to look into.
Yep. All right. The next one, which is yours, but
I guess you can talk about it too.
Incoming rant.
Okay, get on your soapbox. Go.
Okay. So we have here, it was a news post, and the title of the news post is Microsoft PowerPages leaks millions of private records. And immediately this brings up, this is my biggest beef with the mainstream media in general. Let's put a headline out there that is misleading, that's just there to gain clicks and to get people to glance on that, but it gives a very poor outline. Basically, what this is saying is PowerPages is not secure. This is utter complete bullcrap. So basically, if you read through the thing, he kind of goes through about all these dangers of PowerPages, realizing it was a link from a blog post. And that link from a blog post also talks a little bit about security issues around PowerPages and gives a particular example of a misconfigured. Now, I say misconfigured. This was because someone went in and set the security permissions wrong and probably just got lazy around it. And this blog post is essentially someone just trying to sell security scanning services. So it was kind of like a sales blog post. It actually did a really good description of how PowerPages security works. So for that matter, good value. Trying to sell and tell your services by scaring people, not so good value. Even worse, this reporter running on it and making it seem like PowerPages is not secure. So that I'm even hesitant to even post these links in the show notes because I don't want to draw any more attention to, reward bad behavior on the internet or on LinkedIn. Basically, so I, on LinkedIn, I commented on this, and basically, like, my whole thing is PowerPages. If you think of it as a door, the door comes with locks. It actually comes pre-locked. If you install a PowerPages door, the door is locked. You actually have to use a key, figure out how to use table permissions, how to use web roles, and how to actually, even if you're using the Portal Web API, you have to specify what fields on a table level are going to be exposed to the Portal Web API. You have to do a lot of work to now, before it wasn't a couple years ago, agreed it wasn't the case. Now in PowerPages for the last few years, you actually have to work hard to get it to show any kind of Dataverse data. Yes, you can misconfigure it. You can misconfigure anything. You can put on an Azure SQL database on a static website and that could expose data. Again, it just comes down to how things are configured. So to go out and try to put in this misconception that PowerPages is not secure, it's irresponsible. It's just bad journalism, and shame on you guys for doing that. And if you have any comments, reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to defend this position.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's why I put it in here, because I think it's very important to talk. It's like going out and say WordPress is insecure. Yeah, it is. If you don't do your job right, if you don't know how to secure it, sure, it's insecure. And that goes for all products that expose data online. Done. End of story. You have to know what you're doing. I think the original post makes, like you said, a good point about, and actually is pretty leveled in terms of what it goes through. Yes, it was a misconfiguration by someone who didn't know what they were doing, or was lazy, like I said, or forgot. And that's it. And then they go through the whole security thing. We will not put the link to that blog post that you're referring to in the show notes. I don't think that's worthy of anyone's time. But this original post, I think, was a good and leveled blog post. So, but definitely worth talking about, I think. Security being very important.
Absolutely. Like, definitely go through it. Like, there's the new security scanner in PowerPages. It will help identify a lot of these things. Probably does a really good job. There's the security white paper. Like, don't get me wrong. Making PowerPages to secure is a very key component in any PowerPages project. It's just really a case of, this causing this fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the product itself. Mm-hmm. That's what I think is that's the irresponsible part.
Oh yeah, absolutely agree. And this goes for so many things. And actually, just let me just segue a little bit, because I think we can talk more about PowerPages here. But also, I found something this week. So if you're into security things and you want to be scared out of your mind, then there's a podcast episode that you can listen to. And if this doesn't scare the bejesus out of you, let me know, because this was just it is, so let me just backtrack a little bit. I saw Steve Mordew post on LinkedIn, and he said, I heard a statistic in one of the Ignite keynotes that expected global losses from cybercrime in 2024 equals $9.2 trillion US dollars. I picked the wrong business. Steve, I agree. And then Paul Murana, he posted a link to a podcast called Darknet Diaries as a brilliant podcast, and it puts a link on it, on the thing to darknetdiaries.com and Spotify. I look it up, and there's the latest episode is by someone called Chris Rock. No, it's not that Chris Rock. It's another Chris Rock. But that episode was just, it blows what's the name? Jack Rhysider is the host of the podcast. This episode blows him out of the waters. And he's been doing this for years and years and years. As the podcast goes on, he pauses the interview to intersect with his own voice in between things that he says to comment on how incredibly crazy this is. And he challenges Chris Rock as they talk along as well. Just, you know that this is illegal, right? Why do you talk about this? How come the police don't stop you? How can you openly say that you hack Amazon? It's like, well, I rob banks. I don't care. It's just, that's what I do. No one got hurt. Bad guy stole money. I put it back on the other guy's account and he's fine with it. It just blew my mind. So if you want to be scared shitless, that's the way to go.
Title of our episode, Scared Shitless.
Yes, that's in, because it's not for kids anyways. Yes, Scared Shitless, definitely. And let's just circle back to PowerPages, because now, in terms of PowerPages and security, there's a very neat way to make sure that you sleep well at night and that no one gets scared shitless about your PowerPages security configurations. Because, like you say, not only do you have to have a bazillion locks now to open it up to the internet, but you also get alerts from morning till evening for anything that you do. And you can go into the new security workspace to see what it is that you need to do to make it secure.
Absolutely.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the new PEBCAK, Power Platform Admin Center and PowerPages? Or do you want to wait with everything until the Ignite thing?
This is more of the Ignite thing, and I know we're already going to be probably going over time, so we can say that. But just basically stay tuned for when we talk about the new PowerPages dashboards in the PEBCAK.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not thinking that we're going to do both a regular episode and an Ignite special in 30 minutes, do you?
Oh, no, not in 30 minutes. No. But
right,
I'm just
exactly.
saying,
okay.
we'll talk about, let's get through the new stuff, the community stuff, and then we'll talk about Ignite.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so, Right, let me see. So actually, talking about Paul Murana, he also posted on LinkedIn this week about a new power tool that he's made. I know that this is a kind of a commercial thing, so I'm just going to mention it in terms of the tool that he's now launched is also doing Dataverse batching for Power Automate, which allows you to batch update 5,000 rows times all the paginations that you can handle. It's a custom connector. And it's a C# local handled, so it doesn't send off data. It kind of does everything locally before it kind of pushes off, as far as I can tell. And it seemed like a very neat tool for those who need to batch update things, because we see in the DL all the time or in the chats. It's like, does anyone know a tool that can stop a Power Automate from creating 1 million rows a minute because someone created an infinite something and needs to clean up after themselves? Well, maybe this tool is for you.
Yeah, I saw that. That looks really cool. Definitely worth working with a huge amount of rows in Power Automate. So yeah, I mean, it is a paid tool, but I mean, that's the sort of how, sometimes it's, considered the consulting time and development time. If there's a tool available that will do it, that's supported, it definitely could be worth the investment.
Yep. And trying to wrap this up, because we do have a lot of other things to go through as well. I just wanted to mention the latest Sprint Zero podcast, with Mike and John. They had a lady called Linn on. And she used to be a Dynamics consultant. She moved over to the Salesforce side and is now doing consultants training. But also she works at something called the Samaritan project in the UK, where she talks to kind of trauma victims and people that call in to just have someone to call to. And they talk about kind of being comfortable with silence, how to be a good listener. And it was an incredibly good episode. I really, really enjoyed it, guys. So just wanted to highlight that. Made my yesterday, I paused after listening to it because it was, had an effect on me. I really like that you guys dare to talk about these things that may be a bit challenging. And also they talked about AI and how, because they all talked about how you think and you hear that juniors is going to benefit from AI. You know, starting in a tech job today, and you can simply just Google ChatGPT your way through your workday. But actually, it puts juniors at a disadvantage, and it's not something I think is talked about a lot. How you need the experience and the expertise to validate what you get out of these AI services. And if you're a junior, you don't have that expertise. How do you know what's right or wrong? And then you take it at face value, don't have anyone to check it with, and you make a mistake. Is it your mistake? Is it the AI's mistake? And then kind of having the pressure of the billable hours and all that stress. Yeah, they had a good conversation about how it puts juniors at a disadvantage. And I had because it's not really a great learning tool because it's so often wrong. Are we the last generation coders, do you think? I mean, if you can't, how do you learn to become a developer when all developers that have experience use AI tools to be more efficient to save time? But as a junior, then it's even harder then to kind of become a senior in a way.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting because it's going to be, like in terms of like right now we can get GitHub Copilot to generate code for us. And yeah, it works. It's super, but you still, in order to debug, you still got to know how it all works. But more and more, I can see that transitioning where you don't need to know how it works. Although Copilot or AI can tell you what it's doing and how and maybe break it down that way. But even then, how is it going to learn? We're getting into a bit of a catch-22 here. Yeah. Are we in 5-10 years going to get to a point where no one knows how to code anymore? AI knows how to code, but then if something goes wrong, how do we diagnose? How do we fix that? Right. It just sort of gives me kind of vibes of like the late 90s of all of a sudden all the COBOL, people were trying to find COBOL developers to fix a lot of these old mainframe systems that were still running because of the Y2K problem. And it was a big challenge. It was to the point people were learning COBOL just to get through it. Now, of course, that was before AI, so it's a cyclical. Yeah, I don't know. We could be, I think, well, I'm not sure if we're the last generation of developers. I think we might be the last generation. Like, there's going to be developers. We might be the last generation of pure coders. New developers are going to be using the AI tools to build systems. And then we'll go from there.
And maybe we won't even need coders because we don't need the UI. So when Satya Nadella is on stage, and during the Ignite keynote, he says, Copilot's going to be the UI of AI, right? It is going to be Copilot that is going to be, or the chat experience, if you want, or the agents. It's going to be the AI that we know. So maybe you don't even have interfaces or that kind of interaction with technology anymore. Maybe it's simply just voice or gestures, but of course someone has to do the programming and write the code that this runs on. But if then that is also created by AI and agents, then yeah, it is an interesting mind bend.
Like I said, when we started recording, it's going to be different. It's changing and it's different than you think it's going to be. And we're still in for a bumpy ride.
Yeah. And I feel like my mind doesn't have the processing power to kind of, to process everything. It doesn't have the cognitive, but AI does. So if we just ask AI where we're going, then that could calculate and tell us, because my mind is now at a max capacity of what I can imagine for the future.
I think as we get into the new year, this is what I'm finding as we start to go, like I said, this weekend in between flights, trying to build my own agent and then running into these roadblocks and things. And why isn't this working right? And I thought this would do this a different way. This is where it's all going to begin to click. It's like anything else. Once you have those fingers on keyboard or voice to computer, you start building these things. This is when these links are going to put together, and we're going to see how to piece all this together. So I think we'll be all right. But it's also, what we're seeing and what the reality is, I see is still a little bit of a disconnect. And like anything else, once you get the experience with it, and that's what we're getting into now, then hopefully it'll be a little bit clearer. I hope anyway.
Yeah. And actually, to be honest, I'm not scared for my job, because I think that the creating of the code and creating of the application itself, that's not going to be removed by me anytime soon. And I see, plan designer and all the things that we're going to talk about later. Sure. But it's not there yet, and it's not going to be as good as me by a long shot for a long while. What I do see, however, going to be a massive help is the copy paste thing, or where it makes me faster. This is faster than me. And when it removes the mistake that I make, when it removes the human error, when the copy and paste job is perfect every time because it doesn't have a human copying, pasting it, for instance, that is just, those kinds of jobs are just done. If what you do every day is copy pasting, find something else to do. But also then in this kind of space, how do you learn? How, as a junior, do you get started? And that is a good segue to what AJ's doing.
Yeah, this looks really cool. I saw the link here, and he has the Community Power Platform Project Challenge. And big shout out to AJ, a good friend of ours. Haven't seen him in a while. Full of fun of energy. But he's starting the Community Power Platform Project Challenge. And this gives you an opportunity to track a real world app building scenarios. You get your experience by building stuff. And I've said that before. Like I said, just even a few minutes ago, we need the hands-on experience to try this stuff out and build it for ourselves. And just having projects to work on will help us, ramp up on all of this stuff. So he's got a bunch of categories. If you're just getting started, or if you have a bit of experience and you want to go further, all the way up to, the more challenging things like, creating some games or booking solutions. So fun challenges. So do you want to talk? So basically it's a lot really cool. Do you want to talk a bit about the whole process of what to do and what to expect?
Yeah. So this started, I think I saw this on LinkedIn as well. He just posted this as a challenge for people to get started. He had a lot of conversations with people that did the PL 900. They didn't really know where to go from there. And it's like we've been saying, and just like you said, you need a real case, a use case scenario thing to get. It's not like you can just open an app and then you have to have a use case. You have to have something to do. So he created this project. And he has put up different challenges, like you said. To make a collaborative to-do list, a lost and found app, a habit tracker with rewards, event planner app, retro arcade quiz game, a scalable multi-site desk, room, and booking solution, or even a Connect multiplayer for game in Canvas apps, for instance. So these are the challenges that you can kind of dive into, and you upload your solution to a Git repository, and that's how you share it with AJ. And if you do that by I think the deadline is January 9th or 19th. I'm not sure. And so it's actually just in time for AC/DC. And so, because this is fantastic. This is kind of what we do for AC/DC as well. You create your own scenario, your own use case. And of course we have the theme, which is this year is Harry Potter. And then you kind of create your own app experience or your dashboard or your flow within that space. So it's kind of a similar thing. And I absolutely love it. So if you are going to AC/DC, for instance, and you're kind of finding it hard to think about things to make, this is a great list to start off with. And even if you don't want to participate in AJ's challenge, this is something to look into to see because these scenarios are really good fits for Canvas apps as well. So just love this challenge, AJ, and I can't wait to see what you get, the submissions that you get. And I hope that you share all the submissions that you get and who built it and what it looks like and how it's built and stuff, because we want to see this. So we're going to kind of put a pin in this and we're going to follow along. And in January, we're going to have a look to see what kind of came in. And just my last little thing that I wanted to mention, and I promise this is the last thing, talking about use cases for Canvas apps. So Guido Preite, is that how you say it? Preite? I know Guido. I'm sorry, Guido, mispronouncing your name. You know that ticket app that you have when you buy a bus ticket, right? And then and it has the QR code for the ticket to tell people to scan. But you also have that page where you flip your phone and it kind of, the background moves a little bit and you have the timestamp and you have the different labels for them to show for you to show them as they're walking around that it's an authentic ticket and not a screenshot. I think that's kind of what it's doing. He was on his way to Scottish Summit and then he, had a ticket up like that. And he thought, I wonder if I can make this in Canvas apps. And he did. And it's so much fun. And he posted a video on YouTube showing he uses the compass, on your phone integrate and for Canvas apps to kind of show how he moves the label around. And I love that. And we've played with the accelerator and the compass and the things like that because you can tie your Canvas apps to the hardware of your phone. And it's not something I see a lot, but I would love to see that more. And especially if you're developing games, it's so much fun because we created a kind of a Viking Pokemon Go game once at AC/DC where you could kill someone, another Viking, and you have to move around the hotel and bump into someone. You're in the same location, and then you could battle them by moving things around, and it's so much fun. So this is a good also challenge if someone wants to make an app, just explore what Canvas apps can actually do.
Cool.
So great work.
Awesome.
All right.
Good work, Guido.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So that's the end of the list and like I said, we have a full episode just with these last 2 weeks of news and updates from the community alone. And then on top of that, we have Ignite.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and also we have talked a little bit about the news and updates from Ignite, but I also want to give you an opportunity to talk about your experience as a speaker at Ignite. Because I know a lot of MVPs and speakers out there, it's on their bucket list to speak at Ignite. And you did 3 times, 4 times? How many?
3 times. We did 3 lab sessions, and I was at the Microsoft booth for two shifts. So, and then plus talking to a lot of other people, kind of one-on-ones and everything like that. So
tell us about the lab. Tell us how it was.
Okay. So yeah, we'll start there. So we did a lab mastering building model-driven apps. And I did that with Angeliki Patsiavu. We also had Karina Clayson, April Dunham, Sean, last name. Oh, sorry, Sean. I love you, man, but I don't have your last name written down here. And Stalin, who I just met as well that week. He was assigned to be a proctor to the lab. So we'll get the names proper in the show notes. Anyways, so we did this lab. It was a mastering model-driven apps. We have had 75 minutes to talk about how to build a model-driven app, or at least give the highlights along with that. Now, of course, like I said, this is a case of also Copilot being embedded into everything. And it's interesting because when I was giving the session, I said, okay, many of you might be here because Copilot is not in the title. So you thought you could get away from Copilots. Sorry, not going to happen. We actually went through part of the lab. We did use the new data workspace, which is now GA. It's still missing a lot of features, but we used that to build our data model, to also create the very first version of our model-driven app. We dove into some of the I'd say classic stuff like the business process flows, because it is something that it is utilized a lot, definitely in CRM applications to help people kind of go through a process. And then from that, even showed how we could tie this into Power Automate. So you could actually, again, showing a little bit of the better together story with model-driven apps and Power Automate to illustrate the Power Platform is all encompassing. And even then, the first day we actually ran a little short on time. Day 2 and day 3. Oh, really? Yeah. Day 2 and day 3.
So surprised.
we rebalanced and recalibrated, and got through the content all right. So I believe that like a lot of the folks got a lot out of it. So we kind of did the lab commentary style where we built the lab with our participants. I know some of the other labs were a bit of presentation, switch, try it yourself, or some of them were just very much a little bit of an intro and try it yourself. So this is, I think next year, if I was to do it again, that's probably the approach. I'd probably give a bit of an intro, let people work on their own pace a little bit because people work at different paces. The lab environments are really good. If you go to Ignite, it's a great place to do labs because they give you a big screen. There's a surface there and you log into a virtual machine and you actually have all the instructions to the side. And we did, of course, the instructions. We did a lot of screenshots to help people navigate through everything.
And you don't have to bring your own computer? You log into a computer that's on the... Oh, I didn't know that. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's
and then
great.
They get to show off their new computers as well, right? So that's a win-win for Microsoft, I guess.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The Surfaces. Yeah, you weren't allowed to take the Surface with you.
Okay. I already have one, so I'm good.
Yeah. Well, so anyways, yeah, it was a great experience. So yeah, the 3 days there and then doing booth duty. I'd say booth duty. It was a lot of fun. I was doing PowerApps. It was interesting because everybody kept asking me like, poor Sheil Shapari, who's an MVP. She's sort of like looking, she says, why aren't you doing PowerPages? And I said very loudly, because Nick knows other things. A lot of people kind of turned their heads a little bit. But it was I was in the Power Apps, so it was really good. I got to show a lot of the plan designer, which we hopefully will talk about in a few minutes, as well as just talked to a lot of one-on-one, a lot of good course licensing came up a lot. Integrating Copilot, of course, came up a lot. A lot of ALM questions. So Benedict, I think I sold at least 4 or 5 copies of your book because I recommended people. I said, if you want to know ALM Power Platform, this is the Bible. So read Benedict's book.
You should get your own. You need to get your own discount code, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. But even look at mine. I have the little tabs and stuff here in Benedict's book. So get if you haven't got this book yet, highly, shameless plug for Benedict. Anyways.
Plug for Benedict. Mine's in the mail. I think it arrives tomorrow. Can't wait. Oh.
So, but yeah, it was just really good. But yeah, of course there was a lot of, just meeting so many people from the community, meeting product managers, the leadership. Had a good little chat with Ryan Cunningham. A shout out to Ryan, and a few others on the PowerPages team, the PowerApps team, Power Automate teams, of course, Copilot teams as well. yeah, it was just a lot. Like I said, 10,000 attendees. And this was, and again, they're hoping to do more next year. So it was just something. And then the keynote was like 2.5 hours of all this new stuff. Of course, that was a little bit long. It was just sort of by the end, butt was getting a little bit sore, but it was just so much information and just pouring out. So hopefully we can kind of go through and at least give the highlights of what we saw on that from the book of news.
Absolutely.
The high level stuff as well. So
wait. I have a question.
Yeah.
What was the most asked question in the booth? What was the thing that people asked the most about on the booth?
You know what? Probably licensing, I would probably say was the most. But also it was surprisingly, because you got to realize Ignite is all encompassing of all Microsoft technologies, right? Like Azure and all this. We had people come up and say, just explain to me, what is the Power Platform? What are PowerApps? And to me, this was a great opportunity to just say, okay, this is our platform for using low code, no code ways to build enterprise apps. These aren't toys. These are businesses that have been running these types of apps for many years. And then, yes, you can incorporate your developers to get in on the tail end, to extend it so you get your full encompassing solution. So that to me was the biggest impact. Like folks kind of coming in like, okay, tell me about PowerApps. What is it? What is it all about? And then
it's so mind bending.
It is like, of course we think, oh, of course, everybody knows PowerApps, right?
No, but actually it's a bit hard to answer sometimes, I think, because we're so kind of in it that it's hard to see the wood for all the trees kind of thing.
Yeah. And then I would think the other question was, because of course we're showing new features like the plan designer, the data workspace, all the co-pilots, all this cool stuff. And the question is, when is this going to be available in GCC, which of course is the government cloud in the US? So it's
poor people. Poor people. Like in 4 years, maybe. Don't hold your breath.
In the fullness of time. Yeah.
Oh, I feel for those people. Oh, I'm so sorry for them.
It's like, here's this new shiny toy, but you can't have it because you're not on the right platform.
Exactly. Oh, I just feel so bad for them.
So it was good. It was a lot of fun. And I mean, other fun stuff too. Like there was a Power Platform themed escape room, which was really cool. Yeah. So stuff like that. And then Microsoft Learn had the booth. You could hold the Microsoft Learn Championship wrestling belt. So there's a picture of me. I have that, holding that, and a few other things, like a lot of cool stuff. Of course, if you wanted swag, like I got enough crap at home, but like notebooks and t-shirts and things, all people giving away all sorts of stuff. So yeah, if you wanted, you could do your Christmas shopping if you don't mind your family, friends and family getting co-pilot, branded things for Christmas.
Yeah, I think it was very fitting when you had that kind of champion's belt and it was learned because you used to work there in your apparel. They just checked all the boxes for me seeing that picture of you with that on. Yeah, that was great. Oh, wow. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so all in all, you had a good run at Ignite. And of course, Ignite's pretty crazy because it's 10,000 attendees and it sells out. That blows my mind every time they sell out. And of course, I talked about that before, how I didn't get to go 1 year, even though I was allowed to go because I was so slow. It sold out before I got my ticket. And we couldn't get one for months. And so I didn't go. And that's it's going to haunt me forever and ever. But yeah, okay. Let's dive into the Ignite news and updates. And of course, like you talked about, this is just not for Power Platform. This is whole of Microsoft, the whole stack. So of course, Power Platforms is a teeny weeny bit of it. And that's also why in terms of the keynote is 2.5 hours and then you have to listen to CPU updates and how now Silicon is back in the game and things I have no conception about.
So there's a couple announcements there. Like for instance, and this is, away from the Power Platform, but I'll just talk about briefly about this. They talked about Windows Link. When Windows Link is strictly just a box, you connect to the internet, and that's your gateway into a Windows virtual machine. They also talked about Azure Local. So having a big box where you're running your own local instance of full on Azure, for various instances. So to me, this was kind of like, okay, we're back to dumb terminals and on-premise systems. Like, have we come full circle here?
Well,
anyway, I know that's not exactly what it means.
It's a bit of an oversimplification.
Yeah. But it was just kind of funny how it was just kind of ironic. Like, wait a minute, dumb terminals and on-premise systems. But obviously more than that. But that was just, again. And then of course, all the GPUs and the hardware and the silicon and Microsoft developing their own chips, like kind of down to that level. This is what Ignite's all about. It's the full spectrum of this technology. Of course, we're really focused on the Power Platform stuff, which of course is with all the Copilot, and the AI agents and everything like that. That's kind of front and center in our minds anyway. But that's even not to say, like I mentioned earlier, even on the Azure side, the Azure Foundry, even they have something called intelligent apps, which is not the same as our intelligent apps. There's Copilot Pages, which is different than PowerPages. And they actually had people coming to the PowerPages booth asking about Copilot Pages, and even people from the Copilot Pages coming over the PowerPages going, wait a minute, what is this? Is this, or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my heart stopped for a second when that announcement was made. And I thought, surely as an MVP, I would know if they messed with my product. And then I kind of had a sigh of relief going, no, it's not a new name change. It's not a new branding initiative. It is something else. Whew. And then I went on with my day. But yeah, I do see the similarities. And then so many things in the Power Platform ecosystem is also called pages. We have custom pages. And then they also talk about the pages designer in PowerApps and stuff, which also just messes with my head.
Microsoft naming conventions, it's not exactly, there'll still be challenges with that, as we can see. And making up new words like and then, agentic.
Like, what was that you said?
Agentic. Building an agentic world.
Exactly. And then also they changed the logo from Microsoft 365 to the Copilot or the AI logo or icon. It's not logo. Icons. Okay, now I'm just rambling. Let's get on with the Power Platform news and updates. Number 7 out of 9 chapters in the Microsoft Ignite book of news that we'll post a link to in the show notes for sure. There are 4 main items in here. You were there. Do you want to take us through them? What the highlight was of Ignite and the sessions that you went to and kind of your take on the Ignite news? And I'll be ready.
That might be because, we'll post and there's no way we'll cover the entire book of news or else we'll be here for the next 4 hours probably. But the big thing was in terms of the keynote, let's kind of go from that 10,000 foot level. It was led by Satya Nadella, which was pretty cool. I've worked for Microsoft. I've been to a lot of conferences. I've never actually seen him in person. So that was the very first time I actually saw the man in person, like still 50 feet away from me from where I was sitting. That was pretty cool. But he really talked about we're now getting into he said an agentic world, like about agents, about how we now have our own personal agents using Microsoft Copilot. We also have our organization agents, kind of org-wide, our business process agents, and of course our cross-org agents. So having agents talk to other organizations and that type of thing. Of course, security is blanketed all around this. A lot of kind of talk and implications about security. We had our little rant earlier about the PowerPages security. Obviously, that is first and foremost in people's minds as well, along with a lot of this stuff. And you talked a little bit earlier, the theme, the number one thing that we've heard again and again, like used to be, you hear the word Copilot, take a drink. At Ignite, it was, if you heard the phrase Copilot is the UI for AI, kind of take a drink. Pretty much every session opened up with that about how Copilot is the UI for AI. Going and creating your own copilots, but then also the other things, Copilot actions. So going beyond just the chat and getting knowledge, now you can cause Copilot to go and do things for you. And that's really exciting about within the Copilot Studio. And I began to, like, for me, we have our distribution lists that we get for the MVP program. I started to try to build a Copilot that's going to go and it's going to be triggered. You can add new triggers in the Copilot Studio where it triggers on a schedule or it triggers if something happens. You no longer have to put in the prompt to get Copilot to do stuff for you. It can happen for other things and kind of do it all in the background autonomously. So I've tried to, yeah, exactly. But then also tying into things that we know with, like, we can get it to run a flow. I know how to build a flow. Great. I can now tie this into Copilot Studio. I can get this on a schedule. I can put these pieces together and work with a Copilot to put together my own agents. Of course, with all of this stuff, there's analytics behind what Copilots are working, how well are they responding, that kind of thing, how many people are using them. Kind of goes a little bit into the, Copilot Studio will be also in the the new Power Platform admin center as well. Talked a little bit about the on-prem and the dumb terminals. We won't talk about that. Big announcement too about Fabric databases. We know about Fabric, how it consolidates different data sources, but now we'll have something called Fabric databases. And I was talking with one of the other Microsoft PMs that's not directly involved with this, but one of the Power Platform products. And we were kind of discussing, we did not hear the words Dataverse at all during the keynote or in a lot of the sessions, but we heard a lot about Fabric databases. Now, I don't think Dataverse is going away, but I'm also wondering now in terms of Fabric databases, are we also shifting there in terms of where our data services and our data is stored? Because you and I, we're working on projects where we are getting data from other sources. So yes, I'm a big, huge fan of Dataverse. I always will be. But just in terms of the data and how we build business applications, we're interacting with much, much more than just that. So that was interesting. I talked a little bit about Azure. Sorry.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. And just a side note, I also saw some of the MVPs that had gathered, I think it was pins or one of those things that you can sew onto jackets, the different icons.
The patches,
and they found the patches, yeah. And they found one for every one of the products in the Power Platform except for Power BI. And of course, we've raised the question before because it's such a big part of Fabric and that kind of side of the platform or the stack. It makes so much sense for Power BI to move in that direction. Maybe this is actually why it hasn't, because maybe the two are coming together in a new way again that we're not seeing seeing fully yet. So it may be a big change that's coming. And this is just simply me speculating. This has nothing to do with me being MVP or anything. This is just me using my head to speculate. So don't take it for anything else than what it is.
Yeah. And then also they talked about like the Azure AI Foundry as well, where again, we talk about Copilot Studio, but I mean, on the pro dev side, being able to build these agents, use, GitHub Copilots and things like that. Like, again, outside of the realm of the Power Platform. So this whole idea of agents goes much beyond the Power Platform across Microsoft and building these things, using Azure AI and the tools and all types of things coming together. So again, we're almost, in a way we are sometimes beginning to compete a little bit internally, maybe, with some of these other technologies. So again, a biggest challenge, again, talk about not losing your job from a solution architect's point of view, understanding all of these other technologies that are involved and trying to figure out what is the best solution for a particular business use case. So we need to actually up our game. Like, again, we're not going to lose our jobs because now people are going to have to look to us for the expertise as consultants and solution architects and, even developers. What are the best pieces to put together to solve this puzzle in this new AI world? Because there are so many different ways to approach it. And other things.
And in that game, actually, the nuances of what you can and cannot do in terms of limitations is actually what is most interesting when you look at it from that perspective. If you start with a simple Copilot Studio Copilot or a Copilot Studio agent, what kind of roadblocks will you hit? Or is there a cliff that you can't really pass onwards from? Do you have a place of no return where you have to go back if you want to solve something? In terms of starting with AI, in AI open AI Studio, for instance, in Azure, or, starting with something else. And also I'm just curious because, working with Power Automate, for instance, one of the things that is a major challenge is formatting data into the right format, right? Because you get some data from, you just talked about how we have so many different data sources. You have different data from different sources coming in different formats. And one of the biggest challenges with Power Automate, and I see this with the huge Power Automates that we have, is kind of formatting from one to the other. Something comes in as a number, you need to format it as a string. You have the JSON in that format, and you have to kind of, does that not apply to copilots at all? Do agents understand and turn everything into text? How does it understand and do those transitions for us? Or is that also part of the game, part of the transition that we have to understand?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Copilot agents, depending on what they're doing, should be able to interpret a lot of that. And again, I think that's why we kind of go back to a lot of those, the Fabric databases. Of course, the data layer is such an important aspect of it, and getting it to a point where the agents can kind of work together and be able to extrapolate that. Now, the other thing too, it's not like we're completely bumping heads either. You could write, from my understanding, you could write AI agents or directly in the OpenAI, but utilize those in Copilot Studio. So the same story that we've been doing for years and years, it's like you have the developers create some components that the makers can take advantage of as well. So
yeah.
there is
it's exactly the same.
Yeah. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, and other things. What else?
But it's like knowing the difference between when to use a Power Automate flow and when it should be a logic app, and when that logic app should be Azure function. It's the same. It is the same thing. It's just on a different level, different product. So there's a huge number of, so do you want to kind of go through and talk about apps and Power Automates and kind of go through it more structured, or do you have kind of more general things that you wanted to touch on?
I want to touch more on the high level stuff. So basically I do want to kind of dive into, I will get to Power Platform very quickly. One little thing too, of course, there's a lot of new stuff in Microsoft 365 and Teams, a lot of the AI coming here. One thing that they did show in Teams, of course, they showed a lot with basically an agent being part of your Teams meeting. That's the person taking the notes and all of the other things. Like, of course, we have that summaries of the recordings. So we actually have the agent as a participant that basically can go bring up this document, or go, like your own personal admin assistant within the Teams meeting. They showed something else, which I am not comfortable with. It freaked me out a little bit. Is interesting because, me, when I go onto the Teams meeting on the project we're working on, as soon as I appear, if I'm a minute late, the Norwegian stops and the flip to English. It's like, oh, Nick's here. We all have to speak English. And we've talked about that before. And I do appreciate it. Worst case scenario, I could always turn on the captions and the captions would translate. They showed something at Ignite where someone was speaking Spanish and they actually flipped a switch and he began to speak English, even though he was speaking Spanish into the microphone, into his Teams meeting. Yet you heard and listened to him in English, using his same facial, the same mouth movements. That freaked me out because this is where that's not real. You're beginning to obtrusify someone's reaction or the way they're speaking. So I was a little uncomfortable with that. Like, everybody was clapping and I'm going, I'm not clapping for that. I'm sorry. This is a little bit too far. So that was something around the Teams and the Microsoft 365 side.
Yeah. This is something that because this was shown at one of the sessions that I went to at MVP Summit, where they had a recording of Christmas greetings. Everyone says, thanks for a good year, in different languages. And then they had them speak another language with their voice. That's the problem. If it was a woman's voice overhead, no problem, because then it doesn't match and it's something else. It sounds like you. And that's where I have a real issue as well. That just freaked me out. And how do you know that the cultural context is kept intact when we speak English, we struggle with the words and then we make fun of it. And then we kind of, Nick, what's the English translation for? And then we give a literal translation of something Norwegian. And then we can talk about it so that you understand kind of where it's coming from or what that sentence actually means. Cause it's a phrase, right? It's not just the words. Will it be able to account for that? I don't think it can be. Not in a long shot. So what are you missing? If we continue to speak Norwegian and it translates us into English for you, what are you then missing out on in the conversation?
Right, because you're going to be talking about baby sickness, like we talked about in our last episode, and I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" Okay, that's really weird. Someone's baby is sick. How is this involved in the project? But yeah, you're right. Yeah. Things like that. It's unsettling. I want people don't get me wrong. AI is great. Do the tedious, heavy lifting work. Don't try to be me. Don't try to replace. This is the replace. It's not replacing my job, but you're replacing some of my essence in terms of translating that language automatically. So.
And it's flattening you out in a sense because it will remove you. It can't capture and translate you fully. So it flattens you out. And it's not okay.
No,
it's like if you try to translate a poem from Norwegian to English, it won't get it right. It won't get it to rhyme. It will translate one of the words wrong. You have words with more than one meaning and it will get it wrong. And it's not supposed to get it right because it's supposed to be a human thing, right? So, I agree with you. It's so far, but not further. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about Power Platform stuff specifically because there's a lot of cool things that they were showing off there.
Okay, so how do you want to go through this? Do you have a list of things you want to? Because I need structure. Because now we're just babbling.
No, I have a list. I have my points that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So first off, intelligent apps, plan designer. This is really cool. This is something that they showed off. Ryan Cunningham showed that off with Clay Wesner. It is the ability. So this is always my thing with the Power Platform. It's great. You have this blank canvas. You can start going in and start developing brand new applications. Yeah, but I've always been of a case of no. Before you do that, do your data model, do your planning, get a spec ready, get your user stories, do all this pre-work even before you put fingers to keyboard. Well, now with the new plan designer, you basically can start putting in prompts saying, I want to build a new event management system that handles registration, schedules, do. Here is some diagrams we've already done. Here are some notes from a meeting that we had with the client. And the plan designer is going to take all of this stuff and start breaking out user stories, user roles, and all of these things kind of in a document format. And then, of course, you can reiterate on this and begin to do your plan. Once that's cool, the next step is it will go into the data designer. It will begin to break out these objects as tables and present to you these tables to say, here, based on the information you gave, here are the tables. You can begin to, again, reiterate, rearrange. So this is also ties into the new table designer as well. So you can see how these pieces are beginning to fit together. And then you could, again, play around with that. Once you get that right, then the next step, again, based on everything, it's going to generate a Canvas app for this particular use case, model-driven app for this, maybe a Canvas app for a different thing. Plus, it will begin to create Power Automate flows to do a lot of this automation. Now, the plan designer at this stage is creating the Canvas app and the model-driven apps. It's not yet creating the Power Automate flows. It's identifying them. This is still public. This is rolling out to be public preview in the next few weeks. I've been in the private preview, been trying this stuff out. So it's not fully baked. But the whole idea here is, and we know a lot of these Power Platform projects are ongoing, is here's the spot where you would go in and plan and build out the app intelligently with a co-pilot. And it is the thing I like about it is it's taking away a lot of that tedious, busy work of adding all of these tables and creating all these fields. It will do that for you, but you can reiterate and get that done right. Again, I think you need to have a fundamental understanding of how Dataverse works, how model-driven apps works, flows, and everything this is what we talked about earlier. We're going to get that experience by doing it, yet we're having a machine do it for us. So, where's the loop? But overall, I think in terms of planning a project, this is a great step forward to force people into that think before you build stage. And that's what the Plan Designer and Intelligent Apps is all about. And I'm excited to keep playing with it and keep learning more, and really hoping it takes a lot of that tediousness or really help streamline those plans and hopefully identify things that we might not have as consultants or customers ever thought about. This is always the case of, I will often say, we need to figure out the things I don't know to ask you and you don't know to tell me. And that's always some of the gray area in the gap. And I'm hoping with the Plan Designer, it can help kind of narrow some of these gaps as we begin to build it out. Again, co-pilot, not pilot, to build the plan. So I was really excited to keep seeing this evolve and be announced, and people get excited about that. And that's probably in terms of, we talked about my booth duty earlier, there was the questions, but in terms of us demoing stuff, that was the number one thing that we were demoing as part of that people wanted to see and how that worked.
Yeah, that's good. And all of these things from PowerPlatform and the Book of News is public preview from December 2024. And that applies to all items. So get excited to get those.
Yeah, you'll be able to try that soon.
Mm-hmm. I need to go in 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. So I'll be fast. Power Platform Admin Center, revamped. You can actually try it out. Click the little switch. Has a bazillion things in there. Has the PowerPages, what we talked about earlier to manage that, plus your environments, your managed environments. We have a link from EY who did a really good, like you said, a really good summary. EY has been pestering me for months to be mentioned on the podcast. So finally, EY, hope you're happy. Absolutely. I kept sending him the buy me a beer link. So
did he finally buy your beer?
I don't think so, but so I'll hold him to that. Or
EY, you have to, pay your way. Like all the others.
Exactly. And of course, data workspace, which is, we talked about that too, designing those forums, Power Effects functions. So low code plugins are now called Power Effects functions. They're going to be built directly into the Maker. I'm super excited about that because I'm a big fan of this concept. Talked about YAML. We talked about that before, but how YAML will be the backend data structure for the solutions going forward, which is really cool. We already talked about Git integration, Test Studio, Test Engine. There's roadmaps there tied into the Power Platform pipeline. So not only can we deploy, but we can test as part of the deployment process. That I'm excited about. And of course, row summary and model-driven apps. So we can actually take this big model-driven app form, begin to see all the little details in a summary of that, very much like you would do in your email. And of course, PEBCAK, monitoring, analytics. Someone asked me if the Center of Excellence is dead, and it's a hard use case for using Center of Excellence when now we have all of this stuff now built directly into the Power Platform Admin Center. So again, the governance, stuff like that. So yeah, that was, 5 days of pure information boiled down to 30 minutes. Read the Book of News, but basically Copilot agents, if I had to boil it down to 2 words, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And the data entry engine that they're showing with the copy and pasting thing that we talked about last time, that was amazing. How you can now also upload files to a model-driven app, and it kind of puts the right items in the right parts of the form. And of course, you can edit it before you send it in. The create agent from app that Ryan or that Clay was showing. Oh my Lord, what? That's amazing. I can't wait for that to actually work. When you have an app that's kind of going through an approving thing based on different actions, then he simply just went and clicked the 3 dots and he said, make agent from app. And that agent understood what that app was doing and how the humans were using it. And it kind of just gave him the summary of all the actions that it took.
There's probably
blew my mind.
Yeah, there's so many of these. Again, like I said, my brain stuff's pouring out of it. It's just so much.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Okay. That is kind of our digestion of Ignite. One perspective from home and one perspective from at the place in person. I encourage you guys to go in and look at the different Ignite videos online, because most of them are there, and do watch them, because they are worth watching. Do double speed and actually watch them and not have them in the background, because they deserve some time. There are so many new items. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Okay. I need to go pick my kid up from school, or the after school program. So I have to go, but we've now been at it for 1 minute and 1 hour and 10 minutes. So I think we're good to go. Yep. We'll put all the links in the show notes. If this is going to be 1 or 2 episodes, I'm not sure, but thank you guys for listening. And yeah, until next time, our next episode,
December 11th.
Yeah. Christmas is closing up, and I'll see you this weekend. I can't wait.
Yes.
It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please make sure you share it with your friends and colleagues in the community. And be sure to leave a rating or a review on your favorite streaming service. That makes it easier for others to find us. Follow us on social platforms and make sure you don't miss a single episode. Thank you for listening to the PowerPlatform podcast with your host, Ulrikke and Nick Dolman. See you next time for your timely boost of Power Platform news and updates.